dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
It's Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle, and let's begin exploring the wine glass. Today, we are thrilled to be sitting down with a true visionary of the Paso Robles wine scene, the man behind Brecon Estate, Damian Grindley. From the stunning high-calcium hills of the Adelaida district, Brecon has quickly established itself as a producer of world-class, distinctive wines, earning high praise and a loyal following. But today we're focusing on one grape in particular, a varietal that Damian has championed and truly elevated here in Paso Robles, Cabernet Franc. Please take a moment of your time to subscribe, rate, and review Exploring the Wine Glass. It's completely free and is a great way to let other wine lovers know about the podcast. Be sure to head over to the website, exploringthewineglass.com, to read my award-winning blog and to see what else I've been up to. And most of all, please tell your friends about the podcast. Slainte. Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, Spanish wine scholar, sommelier service, champagne and Côte d'Aron specialist, and a WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials, as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. Stay in the know about all things wine by visiting my website, exploringthewineglass.com. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. As you know, we are getting closer and closer to my favorite absolute positive holiday in the world, which is Cab Franc Day, December 4th. And I am honored to have Damian Grindley with me today, who, this is Cab Franc I drink a lot of. So I'm excited to have you on. Hello, Damian. How are we doing?
Great. My favorite thing, I suppose, is holiday is Thanksgiving, because I'm not an American and it's kind of Americans' best holiday in my opinion. So I'm quickly gathering bottles of Cab Franc to take to Thanksgiving tomorrow. So really looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, and that
we'll drink on Cab Franc Day.
Yeah, and that actually is a great, Cab Franc really is a great wine to bring to the Thanksgiving table because of its versatility with all of the food that it pairs with. So you're going to be the king of the ball bringing in all that Cab Franc.
Right, and we've always done sort of food-friendly wines, whether it's Albarino or Cab Franc or other things that are, a classic food wines. I'm going to have to wave my hands in the way because I've got this light sensor in here. And there you go. You get, and wave ever so often, you'll understand what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I know we're talking Cab Franc today, but your Albarino, oh, it's so good. All of them. Three? You make three different ones?
Yes, we do. And Cab Franc, we make two. Currently, maybe a third in the wings as a new vineyard comes on next year, but early days yet. We haven't even picked anything. And you were mentioning earlier that we're recording early in the morning. You can probably tell it's still dark in here. But we've already been tasting Cab Franc because we're actually doing the punch downs, a very, very late vintage. And we literally picked before the heavy rains, and we're glad we waited. We're glad we did. I think patience comes to those who wait. And then it's cool in the cellar, so it's actually being a long, slow ferment. So one of the reasons I'm here is you were also mentioning that Alex, our winemaker, you're expecting him to join us, but he's busy punching down. But I want to give everyone Thanksgiving off, so I'll be punching down tomorrow. So no Thanksgiving for me, but at least I get to smell the Cab Francs, which are, if everyone's ever smelled a Cab Franc ferment, for a British person like I am, they smell like tea. And Assam probably is the closest tea. And so this year it's strangely missing a little bit. It's a little late and it's not quite revealed itself yet. But in many years, you stick your nose in a ferment of Cabernet Franc, and it just smells like not English breakfast, but a little more sophisticated than that. But it's got that British thing. So I'm in my element with the Cab Franc family.
There we go. And so, you actually have seen a lot of dirt across the world, right? When you found your property here in Paso, I believe it was like 2012, what exactly made you say, this is where I'm going to plop myself down and start making Paso your home?
Well, interestingly, that yes, I have worked over the years in a number of places, in Europe, in Australia, some of the classic winemaking regions of the world, like the Barossa, the Coonawarra, Sonoma Napa, all those places. But Cab Franc's one of those things that it needs a Goldilocks zone. It's not necessarily grown everywhere, like Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot or Chardonnay. You can plant it anywhere and you'll get something. But the Cabernet Franc's a little more fussy than that. So actually, I hadn't actually made a lot of Cabernet Franc prior to buying this property. It works well in the cooler spots. So think Sierra foothills, think along the coast here in Paso Robles on the west side. Napa, Sonoma, yes, but ROI means they've got to plant Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's Bordeaux, all those northern climates. So it's a little more fussy there. It does need that Goldilocks spot, and so do I. I have cool British blood in my veins, I suppose. So whereas my wife, being Australian, she's a sun worshipper. She could be Chardonnay or whatever, or Merlot or Cabernet plant anywhere. But no, I'm a little cool closer. So this is why we're on the west side of Paso Robles. It's a compromise, really, between my cool British blood and sun worshipping. And there's a bit, it works because it cools down at night, and I satisfy my British. I need air conditioning, and she can sunbathe to her heart's to content. And Cabernet Franc's kind of like the same. It likes heat because it gets past the pyrazine flavors a little bit, but you need some of that to give it varietal character. But it needs the cool thing as well, and the long hang time, I think, to be world class. And we regularly harvest last week of October, second week of November. Part of that is we've got some older vines and they take their time. But this year we've just harvested again, and it was the second week of November. So yeah, again, extremely late year, excellent hang time. We're really excited about what's happening in the ferment.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Love Spanish wine? Or maybe you want to start exploring it? Get ready for a product that's as fun as it is educational. The Exploring Spanish Wine, the Bingo Brains edition, is one-of-a-kind downloadable PDF that uses a fun game of bingo to help you master the key facts about Spanish wine. It's a relaxed, non-judgmental way to learn about the country's diverse grapes and the regions on your own time. Think of it as a guide where you can sip, learn, and maybe even shout bingo, all for $4. Find all the details and download your copy at exploringthewineglass.com under the Education tab. Slainte. So you mentioned those old vines, and I don't know, are they the oldest Cab Franc vines here in Paso? If not, they're extremely old, but
right. So yes and yes. In a way, we think they're the oldest Cab Franc in the Central Coast. A lot of people are planting. There's plenty of old vines in. There's a little bit of old vine cab. We have that, and for that we're designated a historical vineyard. So for historical vineyard, you've got to be 50 years old. We think our Cab Franc is like 48. So in a couple more years, that'll be added to the historic vineyard thing. But Cab Franc's not one of those varieties that's known for its long life. It's very prone to some viruses, and it kind of just has to look at a virus. My wife gets that. Someone has a cold and she gets bronchitis or the flu. It's a little like that with Cab Franc. And so there's very little Cab Franc that's over 50 years old. So we'll very shortly have that. And it's kind of a labor of love to keep it going. It's sort of duty of care, if you like. And that's what we do. And being old vines, they've got a very distinct character. It's a sort of mid-palate richness. It doesn't necessarily have the color and the structure of modern wines. So in the past, what we've done is, we've blended in a little something else, whether it's Cab or Petit Verdot, just to give it a little color and structure. But our Cab Franc was sort of had a following, so we could never grow enough. So we actually planted some more. And we took us a few years to work out which clone blended well with our old cantankerous old crooner that we had. And we eventually found one that worked well. We planted that. And that really, in essence, is the difference between the two wines that we sent you. We have the reserve wine, which is the almost historic vineyard Cabernet Franc, which is a really red beast. And as far as we understand, it's the, oldest Cab Franc in the Central Coast. And the white label is the younger vines. So each have a little bit of each other in them. So there's a little bit of the younger vine in the older vine, just to give it, a little Prozac or a little boost to get it dancing on the table. And the younger vine, just to make it not so just one-dimensional as we add in the complexity of the old vine. But essentially, the majority of the reserve label is the old vine, and the majority of the white label is the younger, more perky, brighter, younger vine, and that's essentially the difference. And eventually, we do know that the old vine will fall over. It's just will become so uneconomical. So we persuaded our neighbour over the road on the same slope at the same altitude and same aspect and everything to plant some Cab Franc as well. So that's the third vineyard that we're talking coming online. And so in time, we'll bring that in, we'll put that into the plans and maybe do a third vine. But the eventual thing is, if we get to my age with the Cab Franc, another decade or so, then we'll probably have the, oldest Cab Franc ever in this part of the world. So it's so highly surprising we'll get there. So we're planning for the future. It is a generational thing we do here. So we spend a long time looking for the right climate in the right place. And we're not just on in Paso, which has lots of different microclimates and some great opportunities with that diurnal range for Cabernet Franc. But we're on the far west side. You can't really get any closer to the ocean than we are, while still being on the calcareous soil. There are vineyards and wineries that are further west, like Justin, which, for a long time they were majored on Cab Franc, but they're no closer to the ocean. But we're also in this kind of little cool spot. If you look around the vineyard here, we're in a kind of a little bowl or a little valley. So, talking about those microclimates, you can be on the top of the hill and be baking in the sun, but down in the bowl a little bit, it's that much cooler. So, yeah, it's chilly this morning, and there's frost on the ground down here at the winery. So again, that keeps the Cabernet Franc really cool and chilled, and reason why we have these late harvests. And yeah.
And so if we're talking about the old vine versus the younger vine, is your farming processing any different? Is there things that you have to do to help the old man versus boost the younger, the young baby?
That's an interesting question. Yes and no. I mean, the young vines are a little more vigorous, so we drop a lot more fruit. Okay. We open up the canopy a lot more because the canopy is it's like a 10-foot canopy. It's up in the air. We're having to, put it up vertically, so let the sun in, and we hold it back, if you like. So it wants to crop and it wants to produce its grapefruit. We're going, no, you need to hold it back. So yes, we'll come through and we'll drop fruit, and then we'll do a green drop as well. Now with the old vine Cab Franc, there's so little fruit, and that you feel like you're breaking your heart dropping anything on the fruit, and it crops naturally at sort of 1.8, 2 tons to the acre already. So it's very rare that we'll come through and drop any fruit at all. The vines are already kind of old and stunted, and so we really don't need to open up the canopy to let the sunlight through. So we kind of just prune them in the spring and let them go. We might do one very quick run through and drop some second crop or something, and that's crop that is like a second flowering, and you know it's never going to get there. But otherwise, that's really the difference. The old vines are, know what they're doing now. They're in balance, and we are much more hands-off than we are with the younger vines. Also, the older vines probably have deeper roots, so we don't irrigate at all. The young vines, no, they're not that young anymore. We're on the fifth or sixth crop. But the young vines, when they're getting established, you would certainly water and put some irrigation on. But once they get established, that water we drop back and drop back, and it's really just there. If we're in a drought year, you might put some on in the winter just to make sure you've got enough water to make a canopy that's going to ripen the crop. Or if you've got a series of a week of 110 degrees, then you put some water on just to make sure the vines don't fall. But the old vines, you don't need to do any of that. The vines are so deep, you just kind of, I don't think I've irrigated for 2 or 3 years on the old vines. We have irrigation lines in there just in case you have a 110-degree day, or a few of them, because you don't want to lose those old vines just through stress. So by putting water on, they kind of cool them down. But that's the big difference is the amount of fruit we're dropping, the amount of leaves we're pulling, and the amount of irrigation, or no irrigation. But we'll get there with the new vines as well. Eventually they'll fall into balance, and we won't need irrigation, and the roots will be deeper, and we won't need to drop so much crop and pull so many leaves.
And when we get these frosts that occur, do you think the younger vines are more susceptible to the damage than the older vines? They've already seen this. They know how to, retaliate to it, or are they both kind of equally dangerous in terms of Mother Nature?
So frost is really only an issue in 3 areas, we think. So firstly, it's the first frost of the season, right?
Right.
So hopefully you've picked by then, or you're very close to picking. We have had incidents. We've had a surprise frost in early November, and really then you've got about 3 days to pick before all the leaves just fall off and what have you. But usually, we can see that coming, and you've picked before the first frost. So that's the first thing, is that obviously the winter frost, and it's usually not a problem because here in Paso, the first frosts come in sort of first, second week of November, maybe the third week of November. This year, a little later than that. We haven't really had a major frost yet. The other area that those winter frosts can be a problem is if you've got young vines, really young vines. And Cabernet Franc is susceptible to the whole stem, or the trunk, if you like, freezing and splitting. And we had a little bit of that when we planted the young vines originally, but that's only in like year 1 or 2 once you've planted them. Once they get big enough and thick enough, that's usually not a problem. So we're past that now. We've replanted some of those vines that did split. The old vines are so much thicker and gnarlier that they're kind of insulated from the frosts. The other issue, I suppose, is the spring frosts. And that varies every year when the last frost is. What we do is we prune late because we know we're in a little bit of a cooler area, a little bit of a bowl, so that those frosts hang around a little longer. So we wait until the first buds are just trying to break through, and then we come through and prune. So we're pruning in late March, early April. And that actually puts the vines back another couple of weeks. They kind of have to start again. and then sort of push out from the new buds that are left. And that means it gives us an extra 2 or 3 weeks to get past those frosts. And by the time the vines are budding out, we are hopefully, touch wood, past the frost. Now, the downside of that is the vines are already 2 weeks behind their compatriots the other side of the hill. And that's why we are often picking, another reason we're often picking in late October, early November, because we push them back to start with to avoid those frosts. So that's something that's site specific. Wouldn't recommend that in every place, but that's kind of what we're doing here and why we do it.
That's something that as you learned your own property better, as you became more familiar with your own property, that it was a technique that you adapted because of that, or is this something that you kind of knew you were going to have to do?
Yeah, I mean, you always adapt to the site anyway, so there is that. I mean, for a start, I didn't actually know there was Cabernet Franc when I bought the property. And it was going to be a bit of a surprise when we bought the property. Oh, we got Cab Franc. Oh, you mean they just put it in a big blend and it disappeared? Oh, well, let's ferment it separately and see what it looks like. Oh, it's kind of good. Oh, looks like we're doing Cab Franc now. So I'm a sort of reluctant Cab Franc maker to start with, but then I really got into it. I think the other thing that we did that's specific to this block is on one side of the block there's a gully or a intermittent stream. And so what we would notice is that right up against the stream, it would get frosted. That's the lowest spot, if you like. But if we cleared out some of the vegetation in the streamway, then the air would flow like a gully wind, and that would prevent the frosts sticking in that area because it's cold, still air. So if you've got moving air, it stops the frost. So rather than put big frost fans in like some of our neighbors have, all we do is every couple of years we go through and clean out the vegetation in the creek, get good airflow, and all that cold air moves down to our neighbor's property. He gets frosted and has to put frost fans in. So that's another way that we try and avoid the frost. But when it's super cold and a real heavy frost and everyone gets frosted, that doesn't work. But on those, sort of not so bad frosts and it's just cold air that's sinking, then if you can get your air in your creek to flow, it really helps.
So if you were going to create like a Frankenstein, right? You were going to take the best of everything and create a Cab Franc in the lab. What would you take to put together to make that be the perfect Cab Franc for you? What are you looking for when you're making your perfect Cab Franc?
Cab Franc's, unfortunately, it's a little misunderstood, I think, because people are so used to Cabernet Sauvignon. And, they get to think, oh, the biggest, the boldest, the bestest is the way to go. So, and often new clones give you that because they're bred for that. They've got small berries and all the flavor and the colors in the skins, but they end up blurring the lines between Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. So a lot of the new clones, are almost, can you distinguish them from some of the Cab clones in the glass? It's a little hard. So yes, but you've got to step away from big and bold and beautiful and find something a little bit more elegant. And that's what the old vines give you. They give you the elegance, they give you the complexity, they give you the mid-palate weight. But they're not necessarily the darkest or the most structured. Luckily, with winemaking in the lab, if you like, it doesn't take much, a couple of percent of this or a couple of percent of that to help with structure and color. So one of the things we've done in the property is planted a bunch of blenders. And now these are things that in other countries would be considered blenders. We actually bottle them in their own right as well, because in Paso, it's one of those rare places that the blenders can actually be world class. So we plant Petit Verdot. Not saying we would put Petit Verdot every year or even in a Cab Franc because it's very easy to dominate, but maybe 1% might help. We've planted Tannat. Same reason. Tannat's got lots of structure, lots of color, 1 or 2%. Might be just all you need to take the old vine Cabernet Franc to the next level. We planted younger Cabernet Franc, exactly the right same reason. It's brighter and it's got more structure. Again, in one particular year, that might be what the old vine Cab Franc needs. We've got Cabernet Sauvignon, we've got Malbec, but really every year is different on the blending bench. If you go back and look at the 12, 13, 14, 15 years of Cab Franc, it's one of those things we've made every year. Some years we've added a little bit of Cab, some years we've added nothing, some years we've added a little bit other Cab Franc and maybe a percent of Tannat. One year maybe it's Petit Verdot, another year we added Zinfandel at 3%. Oh. And it just needed a little bit of flesh. That particular Zinfandel had a touch of Tannat. And again, a touch of acid, which it needed. That's the other thing. I don't know if we mentioned, but we're on a calcareous soil. And calcareous soils, if you don't know, it's one of those wonderful soils that it's the reverse thinking from high school chemistry. It's an alkaline soil, but it gives you lovely, bright acid wines. And you never have to add any acid to these things. So they're naturally kind of balanced and integrated. And we wanted to be in this lovely cool spot, but as close to the ocean we could be while still having our feet in the calcareous bedrock. And that again is another thing. So, you know, often the difference, I think, when we blend a lot of our wines is we blend them in the lab. But when we're making Albarino and we're making Cab Franc, because they're such food wines, we'll actually sit down and after we've done the major blending, we'll sit down and have something to eat with them.
Oh, okay.
To see how they pair, to make sure we've got the acid balance right. Because, you know, with a food wine, you don't want to dominate the food. You don't want to be a big Barossa Shiraz that you can drink on your own and you can sip all night. You want something that's pairs but doesn't dominate. And so generally after we've done a blending session, we'll, depending on the time of year, which to be honest is usually May. We're mostly doing the final blending on Cab Franc in May and bottling in August. Then it's kind of warm out, but it's not super warm. And so it will be a steak, but in the summer you don't need a big cab necessarily to go with a steak. It can be a little bit more elegant. And yeah, that's generally how we do it.
Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the more controversial aspects of Cabernet Franc, where people come in and they say, oh, I don't like Cab Franc, is those pyrazines. And so, you know, that is definitely a component of where it's grown and how it's grown. So you had mentioned earlier that you think there needs to be a bit of pyrazine in there to be that characteristic Cabernet Franc, but not over dominating it. So explain how you help direct the amount of pyrazines, because you are in a cooler climate, which is going to lend itself to a higher pyrazine. So what are you doing to get to the levels that you want them to be at?
So the old vines kind of naturally do it themselves.
Okay.
The thing is, Cab Franc is grown in some strange places like Virginia and the Sierra Foothills and what have you. And in other varieties, you know, the pyrazines is not a right or wrong answer. Mm-hmm. You know, if you've grown up on wine that has a lot of pyrazines in it, like the Cru Noir in Australia, or maybe those Virginia Cabernet Francs, that's what you expect. That's what you appreciate in Cabernet Franc. And so, you know, it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong.
Right.
So, but stylistically across the board, people are used to some level of pyrazine in their Cabernet Franc. You can get completely past it and have super ripe vines that don't really express that, but they kind of lose their Cab Franciness, in my mind, if that's a word. So I think you need some level. I think it can be too much and it can dominate too much because, we're talking a food wine here. The pyrazines tend to be quite strong. So if you have a lot of them, they're very strong and then they dominate food, which is kind of missing the point in my opinion. So it's a physiological thing in the grapes. So, there's a lot of pyrazines to start with, and then over time they decline, and then a lot of the riper fruit characters come through. So generally, the longer hang time you have, the longer time it has for the physiological changes to happen, and you get past or away through the pyrazines. And you notice that if you plant Cab Franc in a very hot climate, Central Valley-ish, you can get a lot of sugar, very ripe, very quick, but you get a lot of pyrazines and it kind of doesn't gel. But here on the coast, you're getting longer and longer and longer hang times, and you get past that. So the old vines, we don't have to do anything because we're not doing anything to them anyway. They kind of naturally get past it. The young vines, we do have to pull a few leaves, lift a few wires, thin out the crop a little bit. But we get past that. But there are attractive pyrazines and there are not so attractive pyrazines, and I don't have the answer for that, but it's we seem to have attractive pyrazines, I think.
Yes, and I agree. There's some regions that, or go back to if you grew up on, right, you have a house palate. There's things that this is what you're used to, then this is what you're used to. So like, Cab Franc in Michigan, right? They tend to have very high pyrazines. Cab Franc in the Finger Lakes tend to have big pyrazines. And I absolutely agree. It's not a yes or no answer. It's what your palate is for and what your palate is used to and what it's designed for. And so, but I think that's what I hear mostly of. I don't like Cab Franc. And then I say, well, what about Cab Franc don't you like? And then usually it's the pyrazine, not that they necessarily know it's the pyrazines, but what they're describing is the pyrazines. So it seems to be that is a tipping point for people in terms of whether they know it or not, as whether they like Cab Franc. But it's also in his whole family, right? I mean, Cab Franc's family is known to have pyrazines in it. And now, a word from our sponsor. Looking for a unique wine tasting experience? Look no further than Dracaena Wines' tasting room in downtown Paso Robles. Located on the corner of 13th and Pine, this charming spot is not your average winery. Founded by passionate wine lovers who also happen to be the brains behind Cab Franc Day, Dracaena Wines is proud to call themselves home of Blanc de Franc. This crisp and elegant white wine has gained a cult following and is just one example of their superb offerings. With over 10 years of consistently receiving 90+ ratings from top critics, these wines are sure to impress even the most discerning palates. So come raise a glass with us and celebrate great wines at Dracaena Wines' tasting room.
Yeah, if you brought up on a West Coast ripe tutti frutti wine, and someone gave you a Michigan pyrazine or a Cab Franc or a Virginia Cab Franc, you'd be, wow, what's this? Mm-hmm. For me, it's Riesling. I grew up on German Rieslings, light, crisp, aromatic. And then I went to Australia and had all these Rieslings from a region called the Clare, which are big, diesely, oily things. And I've just never been able to get my head around them. And I imagine that's what's going on with people with Cab Franc. But in some ways, if we could point people to Cab Francs that are a little bit more on the riper side to start with, that may be where the introduction needs to be. But that they tend to be cooler climates and way out west, and sites are quite hard to find, so they're not the cheapest wines to start with.
Right. And now, so we are in a wine region that is, it started with the Zinfandel. We are, Paso GSMs are all over the place, right? There's loads of them around. Syrah is a big thing. What can we do? And this is what Cab Franc Day, this is why I created the holiday, is to make Cab Franc get the spotlight that it deserves. So in a region where Cab Franc is not in the spotlight, but we're trying to get it in there, what are some things that you think we can do to make it become more in the spotlight? Make it be that main table grape, make it be the Thanksgiving wine.
Well, I think you hit it on the head there. We need to bring the day forward by 3 or 4 days. Well, Thanksgiving is a flexible date anyway, but if we can bring it forward a few days, or at least get the banner out early, then associating it with Thanksgiving rather than December the 4th, which means nothing to nobody really. But historically, don't forget Justin's Isosceles, which really was one of the big companies that put Paso on the map. Originally was Cabernet Franc based.
Mm-hmm.
They've moved away from that, and it becomes more and more cab to be, as they grew bigger and wanted to be more commercial. Sorry, got to wave at the lights again. But there was a reason why they did that in the first place. And when I first moved to Paso, one of the things that blew me away was a winery called Cass had a Cab Franc. I think they've since pulled it out.
Yeah.
But that was kind of, that's kind of good. That's kind of world class. That's very European. But yes, I think we need to, if we're going to shout about Cab Franc and have a specific day for it, we need to have all these things in advance of December 4th and try and tie it into Thanksgiving and kick Grenache down the pan and bring Cab Franc out to go with your turkey dinner, I think.
Well, I will tell you the reason why I chose December 4th was because I hate rotating holidays. So
Right.
I always liked the holidays where you look on the calendar, you ask Google what day is blah, 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 and it's always the same day, right? I was born on Thanksgiving, so I get the rotating thing. Like my birthday is not on Thanksgiving this year, it's the day after Thanksgiving, but then every whatever 6 years, I think it is on Thanksgiving. I just never liked that concept. So I chose to go with a specific holiday. December 4th is the anniversary of Cardinal Richelieu's death. And he is kind of the father of Cab Franc, right? He brought those vines from Bordeaux to the Loire Valley. But I do try to get more stuff out there for that whole month of November. But I will say I haven't tried tying it into being a Thanksgiving wine. So next year I will start doing it with that
Maybe
way.
we should give it a try. Yeah.
I will give it a try. I will definitely give it a try. Um, what do you think? Now, this is the whole anti-Cab Franc Day concept, but Cab Franc is used as a blending grape. What we're trying to get it to be known as a single varietal, but what characteristics do you think Cab Franc has that has kind of shoved it into that blending grape characteristic?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I think that really comes from the Bordelais. And also, Cab Franc's not necessarily the easiest thing to grow in a damp climate. It's very prone to viruses. It can have some issues with moles and other things. So for them, and they're changing as well with climate change. And then if you notice that sort of Tannat and Albarino, which are two of the wines that we major on, are also now blending so experimental, to use the right word, blending grapes in Bordeaux. So their need for blenders is changing too. Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot sometimes need some help. And which are the two major Bordeaux varieties. Cab Franc kind of disappeared from Bordeaux Malbec disappeared in phylloxera and went down to Argentina. So they didn't have that blending option. But Cab Franc is, it generally aromatically adds a lightness of touch and open things up. It also added a bunch of acidity generally. And remember, we're talking Bordeaux before the days of refrigeration and the way of easily adding acid and other things. So, that really did help. It added a little more elegance, if you like, a bunch of different tannins. Tannins, can be all on the finish. They can be a little drying. There are different mid-palate tannins, sort of upfront, all sorts of things. And so it could add complexity. We do a Bordeaux blend, if you like, here, a Meritage. We tend not to put much Cab Franc in it. It tends to be Malbec, Petit Verdot, and Cabernet Sauvignon base. So for us, Cab Franc is more of a standalone. We'd rather go the whole hog rather than have a little bit of elegance in our Meritage. We'd rather just have the elegance over here. This is the elegant wine, and this is the
big boy,
the beastie boy, and you can have one or the other. And because when we put the Cab Franc in the Meritage blend, it's kind of like, well, what is it? It's not really the huge, strong, powerful Bordeaux red, and it's not really the elegance of Cab Franc, and it's not the brightness of Malbec. So we're saving all our Cab Franc, which is kind of a rare beast anyway, because it's, there's only 3.3 acres of this oldest Cab Franc. We need every drop in the Cab Franc. We find it's excellent on its own. And it adds complexity to a Bordeaux blend or a Meritage blend, but the rewards are less than having it on its own. We'd rather see the separation so it becomes plainly obvious to people.
And I think that does make sense because, and there is sometimes you want that elegance, you want that Cab Franc, and sometimes you do want that big boy. And so you don't have to give or take, but if you're kind of dulling down, for lack of a better word, your big boy, now you don't have that option of if I feel like that big boy. So I get why you do that.
I think also, we keep talking about Cabernet Franc and the Bordelais, but we need to take a page, I think, out of the Italians. No one would think in Italy twice about having a Sangiovese in the summer with a lovely steak beef-based dinner. And Cab Franc, very similar weight, very similar brightness, very similar, maybe a few more pyrazines and things, but the Italians wouldn't think twice about it. So, maybe we should get our head out of the Bordelais and go, the Italians do this. This is pretty damn close. This is what you need to be doing. And maybe embrace Italian food culture a little bit more.
I like it. So as we said, Cab Franc Day is December 4th. Is Brecon doing anything special for the holiday? Are you doing anything in the tasting room?
We might be pressing out the Cab Franc. It's that late. A December press out. Actually, I should try and do that because we're on track at the moment, somewhere between sort of December 3rd and December 5th to press out our Cab Franc. So maybe we'll be too busy to do anything special because we're still
press out party.
Press out party for the Cab Franc. Definitely, I think that's the way we need to do it. I'll think about that. But wine comes first, so if it's not ready, we're not going to press it out. Or if it needs to be pressed out for, well, we should have. But if there's any way we can swing it, we'll have a press out party, I think. And that's like the first time since we've had this property, which is like 14 years now, that we would even get close to pressing out on Cab Franc Day. I mean, occasionally we have one or two ferments going through Thanksgiving, and they'd usually be cabs or Tannat or something. This year we've got like 20 or 30, and all the Cab Francs, all the Tannats, half the Petit Verdots, half the cabs. And so we're definitely pressing something out on the 5th or the 4th and the 5th. I'm not quite sure what, but I'll try and swing it and have a Cab Franc press out party.
Yes, and then
I'll send you the photo. I'll send you the picture.
Please do. I will send that out on the Cab Franc Day on the Cab Franc Day social media. Definitely.
Still pressing, yeah. We'll try and swing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you've been making wine in Paso for 14 years, or
No,
that's
I've been
just the
making.
Cab Franc?
No, it's 14 years since we owned this property,
Okay.
but I've been making Paso wines a lot longer than that. I've been Monterey in 97, 98,
Okay.
and we used to come down and source fruit from this area in the early 2010 to 2013. No, sorry, 2000 to 2003. I was in Paso for another winery, and then we bought this property back in 2012. So yeah, so on and off, I've been making wine in Paso for a long time, but 14 years straight on this property.
Okay. And so just so people know exactly where you are, right? Paso is divided into these sub AVAs. Which AVA is Brecon actually in?
We're in Adelaida. We're right on the corner of Adelaida and Willow Creek, actually. But there's really three: West Side, which is a cooler, more ocean-influenced appellations for Adelaida, Willow Creek, and the Templeton Gap. And there's a nice little road that sort of wanders through those cooler appellations, it's called Vineyard Drive. And we're right in the heart of Vineyard Drive. And beautiful part of the world, rolling hills and ancient oaks, and some old vines too. So that's where we are. We're open every day, 10 till 5, and except Thanksgiving, obviously, and Christmas Day. And we prefer you to have an appointment, but we'll usually squeeze you in if we can. So come knock on the door, and we've got some very, very, very friendly tasting room staff and greeting dogs and all sorts of things.
I was going to say, and it's very important you say you're dog friendly because that's
Right.
very important. So we're going to go back to Cab Franc a bit before we wrap it up. And I just want to, there's a lot of philosophies on how you treat the fruit when you come in, because that's really each winemaker's mark, if for lack of a better word, mark on how their Cab Franc is produced. So like as the fruit comes in, what is your general concept? Are we whole cluster? Are we destemming? Is that a vintage to vintage decision? What are you doing once it gets into the vineyard? I mean, into the winery.
I tend to be a bit more holistic on these things, and start the other way around. And what are we trying to do? We can adjust the winemaking and the winemaking style to achieve an end goal. Now, some wineries, of course, want their house style, which is maybe a very dominant type of oak, or that give them a consistency across all their blends. What we tend to do with Cab Franc is with oak is trying to do a framework, so it like pairs with the Cab Franc in the same way that Cab Franc pairs with fruit. We're not trying to dominate it. We're trying to put a framework around it. So I actually use a cognac cooperage, which is kind of a little bit rare, and it tends to be quite a subtle oak, but it does a very, very good job. One of the oldest cooperages in France, actually. And then we also have, if you think about it, these old vines that naturally get past the pyrazines and have a lot of mid-palate fruit weight. So, you try and emphasize what the fruit has, or work with the fruit you have. So if you've got a wine that is naturally low in pyrazines, well, great, run with it. Why use winemaking techniques that are going to emphasize pyrazines? So we try to use those techniques that work with the fruit we've got. Say, hey, we have low pyrazines anyway. That's a great thing. Let's not do a cool ferment because that emphasizes pyrazines.
Okay.
Why would you do stem insertion on stems? Because that adds another pyrazine green thing. We don't have that. Why would we do that? So that moves you down the line with destemming. and so on and so on and so on. So really, all our decisions are not made on what our winemaker wants to do or what our house style, a perceived house style might be. It's what the fruit we have and what we're trying to achieve. So we emphasize the fruit, work with the fruit we have.
Let them dictate. Let the fruit dictate
the
what it's
fruit
going to be.
dictate, exactly. And so, that goes to the vineyard techniques as well. Now, if we had a wine, let's say, that was very, I don't know, very structured, you'd have to make the decision, well, do I emphasize that structure? Do I make a wine that's going to age for 10 or 15 years, or do we work away from that and try and lighten the structure, make it more approachable? That's not a thing with a Cab Franc, that's just,
in general.
It's more of an elegance thing. So, we take a different view to that. We're trying to emphasize the fruit from all our vineyards and make them unique and emphasize the vineyard, not the winery.
Okay. And so I'm going to let you off the hook of Cab Franc, not necessarily Cab Franc, but if you had to pick one varietal or one variety that Brecon kind of is best known for, or that you're going to rest your laurels on, it can be Cab Franc, but it doesn't need to be. Do you have one? What would you say that is?
Well, if you'd asked me when I bought the winery and when we started, what that might be, you'd have got, like any group of winemakers in a room, 10 different answers. So who knew that on the white side, probably our flagships have been Albarino, and Albarino has been a great ride for us. We've won some amazing awards. We've, which other wineries do four now different Albarino-based blends, and so Albarino has definitely been, and it's a niche. There's definitely people who follow that, and it's our thing. And in a region that is doing, not necessarily known for its whites, to be doing light, crisp, refreshing, sophisticated and characterful whites, Albarino's it. Now, strange enough, you ask us on the reds, it's, I think in the Bordeaux reds, it's definitely Cab Franc, partly because of that older vine thing. It's something unique. It's got a cult following. Some people don't understand it. You put it in, we only tend to put it in international shows because, some people are so framed by Cabernet Sauvignon that they don't understand an older style Cabernet Franc. But also we've had a lot of success with our Rhone blends as well. So it's somewhere between the Albarinos, the Rhone blends, and the Cab Francs is the two. But the funny thing about Brecon is you won't find the mainstream things here.
Right.
You won't find a Chardonnay. We've never done a Riesling. We've never done a Pinot Noir. We've never done a Merlot. We have Cab Sav, and so we bought the property. So we tend to do all these. To some people, they're weird and wonderful, whereas they're everyday drinking wines, and they're much more fascinating. And the great thing about Paso is we've got an empty field next to us, and we want to plant it, and we know what to plant, and we can plant anything we want, and we just know it's going to be good. We just don't know what,
Right.
don't know how good.
Well, and so we're going to fast forward to like maybe 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Where do you see Brecon? Where do you see Brecon Estate? What do you see as yours and Amanda's like legacy in Paso?
Well, that is a good question. I was definitely part of a wave of professional winemakers coming out of here as Paso transitioned away from, ma and pop wineries, if you like, as a term, and we brought an extra dimension, if you like, and again, I think it's in a time of transition. My thoughts are turning towards the next generation, and there's a lot of new, young, enthusiastic people coming through. They don't necessarily have the financial clout to be able to afford a winery these days, especially out here on the west side. And so, it's hard for them, and how you guide them through that and encourage them to do that. That's, a different thing as I transition away from doing punch downs every day, and all that sort of good stuff, to sort of, if you like, semi-retirement. Um, the legacy, I think, that is a good question. I've not really thought of that. We've certainly shown Paso that it can. I think I do have the answer, actually. And what I've always tried to do is, we want to be a Paso winery. So many people come here or come to other wine regions and they want to be a Rhone winery, or they want to be a Bordeaux winery, or they want to be an Italian winery. And at the end of the day, Paso needs to be known as Paso, to stand on its own 2 feet. So in 20 or 30 years' time, we need to be doing what's best for Paso. And that's what Brecon's always done. It's been trying to elucidate what the best varieties or the best blends are for Paso Robles, and to be a Paso winery. So when people ask us, what are we? We're a Paso winery. We're doing the best grapes or the best clones. And that might be, we've got a foot in the Bordeaux camp. We've got a foot in the Rhone camp. We've got a foot in the Spanish, Portuguese white camp. But at the end of the day, it's Paso first, and which I think something Gary Emery used to say. And so I think, that's what we're all about. We're not trying to be an old world wannabe. We're trying to put Paso on the map. And that sometimes is a difficult concept to get over to people. And Cab Franc has been part of that, because there's very few places in the world that Cab Franc can be world class. Paso is one of them. Tannat, same thing. Even less places in the world that Tannat can be world class. And Paso is one of them. Petit Verdot, one of those traditional blenders in Bordeaux. Very few places that you can bottle it as a standalone wine. We do. Paso does. And you can say that in the Rhones, and because all these microclimates and all these things. So I think it's part of a movement to be known as Paso Robles, and not as the next Napa or the next Bordeaux or something. That's not what should be in anyone's thoughts now. We should be known as being Paso Robles.
Yeah. I like that answer. I give kudos to that answer. I love it. And so as we wrap it up, because you are busy, just let's remind people where they can find Brecon, how they can get your incredible Cab Franc and other amazing wines. And I will speak up the Albarino. I absolutely love the Albarino, the Malbec. It just goes on and on. But so where can they find you? Where can they find your wines? And what can they do to get to you?
So we are a small boutique winery. You will not find us in any stores or anywhere but my friends' restaurants. So you have to go online to www.breconestate.com to find these wonderful wines. They're small batches. They sell out. So if the Cab Franc's there, it'll only be there for a month or two, and then it's gone to the next season. Or you can visit us at our wonderful West Side tasting room.
Which also won awards for architecture.
Oh, I forgot about that. But it's open 7 days a week, except Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, from 10 till 5. And we're happy to make an appointment or take you through some of our flights. They're always changing. And there's, of course, a wonderful wine club, which means you get to get some of the more smaller batch productions that you don't see unless you're in the wine club, which is where a lot of the older wine, Cab Francs, and all those things disappear to. So we'd love to see you, and it's there's some exciting things coming down the line, and our Cab Francs. It's an odd time for us, actually, December 4th, because we bottle our Cab Francs in about August, because we need to clear out for bottling and for harvest and everything. But our Cab Francs take about 6 months in bottle before they come around. Usually bottle shock and the rest of our reds is about 3 months, and we're releasing those. But Cab Franc takes its sweet old times. It may be the old vines or something. And so, we sent Laurie these wines to look at, but we're sending the previous vintage, the 22s. The 23s are in bottle. They'll be released in probably the spring, probably March, which will give us about 6 months, and they're perfect. So, that really probably differentiates us from a lot of Cab Franc producers, is that we are very patient, and we harvest late, and we bottle late, and we release late. So, but the rewards are worth it.
I will attest to that. The rewards are worth it. I mean, obviously, we drink a lot of Cab Franc. We make the Cab Franc, but we drink a lot of the Cab Franc, and yours is always in the house. So we love your Cab Franc.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for coming on and for sharing your thoughts on Cab Franc. And I am going to start next year with promoting it maybe as more as a Thanksgiving Day wine. I love it. But happy Thanksgiving, happy Cab Franc Day. And I will be putting
Happy Press Out Day, because we'll be pressing Cab Franc on Cab Franc Day. And the stars are aligning, obviously.
Yes. And pay attention to those who are listening. Pay attention to my social media, because there will be more about these Cab Francs on my social media, Exploring the Wine Glass. So thank you very much, Damian. And you actually didn't mention it, but social media is Brecon Estate. And they are on the socials, so you can follow them along there also. So I want to thank you again. Have a great day, and good luck with all of the press outs and all of that. Tell Alex I said hi. He's having a good old time getting a workout, and we will talk soon.
He's got a lot going on. He's got his own brand he's starting up, which is Grenache. We can't talk about that. And he's having a baby, or his wife's having a baby. And he's got the latest harvest ever. So he's completely swamped at the moment. So that's one of the reasons you've got me rather than with Alex.
Okay. Well, tell him congratulations on all of that, and I will have to get around to finding out more about his own label when we're off camera. So, thank you.
Okay.
I want a nice glass.
This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I'm also on LinkedIn as Laurie Hoytbud. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Music, Wine by Kevens. Until next week, Slainte.
Oh, yeah.